Perfect. There we go. We can see the Pegasus cars in the background there.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, well, I might just kick us off with a very quick introduction. My name is Marty from Birchal. Very excited to be here tonight, and thanks so much for everyone to join, who's giving us some of your evening to be here to hear from the Pegasus team about their upcoming investment offer. First of all, before I kick off, I just want to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land which Birchal is beaming in from, which are the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin nation, and we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Like I said, really excited to be here tonight to have the Pegasus team here with us. We've got a good hour to go through investor questions tonight, but before I kick off, what I might do is just hand over to the Pegasus team for some quick introductions.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jackie. I am the director and CTO of Pegasus, and I'm the guy that was flying the police vehicle in the video and also driving it. Hope you liked it. Thank you very much.
I'm Debbie Thomas. I'm Special Assistant to the founder and CEO of Pegasus. Great to be here tonight.
Thanks everyone. And thanks for joining us. So yeah, like I said, the main purpose of tonight is for learning more about the investment offer. I'll just give you a bit of an idea of the structure. So I've got a little bit of information to cover from Birchal's end about our role in this investment offer. Then we're going to pass over to the Pegasus team for their presentation, which should go for between 10 to 15 minutes. And then we'll have plenty of time at the end for audience questions. In terms of questions, you'll see down the bottom there's a Q&A panel. So what you want to do, if you have a question at any time, feel free just to put the question in there. And we'll get to it when we have time. The other thing you can do is upvote questions. So you'll see there's a little thumbs up symbol next to any questions that's been asked. And if you upvote a question, it'll put it to the top of the list, and that's how we'll prioritize getting through all the questions. So a little bit of information about Birchal and our roles. So we're the crowdsourced funding platform that is hosting the offer for Pegasus. With crowdsourced funding, this is a highly regulated industry. It's controlled by ASIC. And so what we're doing here is making sure that this investment offer meets all the rules and requirements set out by ASIC. So yeah, this is an industry that is highly regulated. So just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that. And for the information that is coming out tonight in this webinar, please treat this as informational purposes only. There's no direct investment advice here. And we definitely encourage you to do your own research and also to consult all the necessary documents once this investment offer goes live, in particular the offer document. So all that information will be out next week once the investment offer launches. Very high level from our end in terms of how crowdsourced funding works. So this new way of raising capital has been around in Australia since 2018. And the rules allow early stage companies to go out to a large group of investors and raise capital. The key difference is that what you're allowed to do under these laws is raise capital that doesn't usually apply to the normal shareholder caps. So for early stage companies, usually they're only allowed 50 shareholders, which means that they can only really raise money from high net worth people. So through this type of capital raising, what it allows is companies to go out there to an audience and get them in early on. And there's no limits on how many investors they can have on board. So that's the key difference between this type of capital raising and other early stage capital raising. It's not like the ASX. There's no open market for trading shares, and very rarely do companies in these situations pay dividends. And we can get into the details about all that stuff later. But just to highlight from Birchal's perspective, we've done more of these types of investment opportunities than anyone else in Australia. We've done more than 200 campaigns to date that have been funded. More than 200,000 investors have come through our platform as well. So that's enough about us. What I might do now is hand over to the Pegasus team to go through their presentation, and just want to reiterate again, when you have any questions, don't wait until the end, just pop them in the Q&A panel down below. Over to you.
Okay, I'll start sharing my screen, and I hope you guys can see me and see the presentation. Hopefully that's working.
Yeah, awesome. It's all good.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming, and thank you certainly for your interest. We really look forward of having all of you as our investor, the Pegasus Flying Car Company. So we will go through a short version of our pitch deck, and we will be explaining a little bit more about the flying car that you see behind me, and also about our company. But we will be leaving plenty of time for you to ask all the questions that you want. Although the flying car industry still sounds very futuristic to many people, But it is really happening right now. And the reason for this market to be emerging is because that the lower airspace is something that we still have not utilized for daily transportation. And here, Pegasus, we developed a three-dimensional technology to resolve the two-dimensional traffic congestion issue. So the dream really started in 2009 that our founder was stuck in one of those soul-destroying traffic jams. He looked up in the sky and saw the potential. 2017 was a significant year for us because we actually conducted our first proof of concept, and it was aired on Channel 7. 2020 was another significant year because E-Class earned our first certification of airworthiness, and we participated in the Las Vegas CES and got a lot of great feedback. Although COVID time was quite difficult for us, but we managed to get 10 units of orders for the Pegasus E flying car. And 2023, it was a really big year, and it's been fantastic for us because of the Avalon Air Show. We received great public feedback, all the people that came over, and also we had significant media coverage. So what makes Pegasus stand out from the rest? And what makes Pegasus unique is really our engineering approach and also our market entry strategy. So when we designed the Pegasus E flying car, we thought that we have to make sure it is practical today. It has to be able to operate. We do not want to design something that is so futuristic that every regulation must change for it to be in operation. So here we have it. The Pegasus E flying car. It is the world's only vertical takeoff and landing, but also rollable flying car. I'm sure you have seen the video on YouTube of the police version going around the racetrack, and so it makes us the first flying car that's capable of drifting around the track. Range is a very significant advantage that we have, and we achieve it by using our specialized hybrid system. So that means we use 98 unleaded petrol for flight, but using electricity for drive. Using 98, it allows us to fly in the air for 3 hours with a range of about 480 kilometers. And also on the road, the maximum speed is 120 kilometers per hour with a range of 70 kilometers. So really, you can drive the Pegasus flying car to any petrol station with 98 and be ready for another 3 hours of flight. And also, during the weekend, you can use that road range to drive to the supermarket to buy milk if you need it. We also have some really neat safety functions. For example, we have a retractable steering wheel. So that means when you are flying in the air, the steering will actually get stowed away automatically. And therefore, as you're on the cyclic control with the right hand, it's not possible for you to bump into the road set of controls. This is to ensure complete separation between the two systems, which adds safety. So with those designing principles, Pegasus is one of the only 2 companies globally to have a certification of airworthiness as a rollable flying car. And the other company is called Aircar. It's from Slovakia, but they require a runway to operate. So I think you must agree with me that if a flying car requires that runway to operate, then it does not make sense. It does not make sense at all. To operate the Pegasus flying car, you will need a helicopter license. And in Australia, you can get a recreational helicopter license for operating this, and it only requires 25 hours of training. So it is not much at all. And for driving, the certification process is already happening, and we think it will be completed by the end of the year. Here we have a comparison chart with our closest competitors. We look at the first 2 on the left, and then you can see that they also use petrol for power. However, you can also see that they require runways to operate, especially if you look at the first one, Aeromobile. They are priced at $1.6 million US, which is really significant. So for a product that still really requires a runway to operate, Pegasus is so much more advanced compared to those guys. And the 4 on the right-hand side, Ehang, Toyota, and Opel, those are all eVTOLs, meaning they use electricity for power. And the thing is, as much as electrical energy is the future of aviation, but it is not today. So you can see in their flight range that the one that's doing best is about 35 kilometers. So I'm not so sure exactly how functional these ones can be. And again, is to show that Pegasus is a very practical solution. Is an extremely well sorted package that we're functional, we're practical, and great value for money as a roadable flying car. And I must say that for the Pegasus e-flying car that are behind me right now, we're not only going to be aiming for the individual or the private market. We're also going to be aiming at those specialty departments like the police force, the emergency rescue services, and even the border force, that it will be a very efficient tool for them, and we see great utilities from it. And we have been getting interest.
Thank you, Jackie, for that deep dive into all of the great functionality that Pegasus flying cars have to offer. But let's step back and look at the bigger market. There actually are some big players in advanced air mobility, or what we call AAM, and you can see them on this particular slide. These companies all have two important things in common. First, they all went public in US markets using a special purpose acquisition vehicle, or a SPAC, which is a common way that emerging technology companies do list in the United States. Second, these companies are all designing eVTOL air taxis. Now, eVTOL, as Jackie has explained, is an electric VTOL. It uses pure battery power. And Jackie has also given us some very important information that batteries are not the greatest technology these days. They have very limited energy density, and they have a lot of charging issues. But, you know, Pegasus's hybrid power system offers a solution to this that works now.
Yeah, and the purpose for this particular comparison is that, well, Pegasus is very comfortable being compared to those because in terms of range anxiety, that Pegasus, we do not suffer at all. So again, by comparing to those companies, we can see where the potential for Pegasus will be. Even with the bigger players, we feel the competitiveness in our own products.
Now, the advanced air mobility industry is kind of, it's emerging, but it's very fortunate that two big companies, big influential companies, have done some very thorough research into this industry, and we'd like to share a little bit about with you tonight. Morgan Stanley put out a very well-respected report in 2021 that estimated the market value of AAM in the future. Now, it's important to realize that the current market value of AAM is less than $10 billion US per year. Morgan Stanley estimates that by 2040, this market will be worth nearly $1 trillion US, and that's quite a bit more than the whole aviation market is worth today. Okay. Morgan Stanley also pointed out a few headwinds for AAM, such as the battery density and charging issues we've discussed, and also the slow pace of regulatory evolution, given the strict focus on safety that is necessary in aviation and gives it the safety recognition that it deserves today. There are a few green shoots that Morgan Stanley points out. Things like GPS technology is advancing. We've got better and better automated flight and automated driving capabilities, and additive manufacturing, or what we commonly refer to as 3D printing, is really critical as well. That's advancing, and that's helping us take the weight out of our flying vehicles. Uber, on the other hand, looked at the market from a slightly different perspective. They looked at the air taxi network economic model. Now, both Morgan Stanley and Uber agree that the future of AAM will largely coalesce around moving people and moving goods. Okay, so it's air taxis and logistics vehicles. Now, Uber in their investigation looked at 5 factors that make up the economic model: motion efficiency, the unit price of the aircraft, the utilization factor for the aircraft, the infrastructure required for air taxi networks, and of course the operating costs on an annual basis for these air taxi networks. Now, Pegasus itself is working hard on a 4-seater air taxi. And as such, Pegasus aspires to be an early market entry leader in this very air taxi market that Uber has so well described for us. And we truly believe that our tried and true technology combined with an innovative package of delivery will position us very well for the AAM markets of the near future. But let's take a look at the key cost elements that Uber designated and see how Pegasus plan performance racks and stacks against that. First, there's motion efficiency, which is really how much distance you get for a certain unit of energy or fuel. Uber estimated that the sweet spot is 80 to 100 kilometer travel segments, and we think we can do better than that because we're looking at a 50 to 100 kilometer sweet spot range where we're very energy efficient at either end of that range. The unit price of VTOLs, Uber said initially you're going to see high cost of maybe $600,000 US, but as economies of scale and manufacturing kick in, that will drop to about $200,000 US per vehicle. And we agree with this at Pegasus. Our initial unit prices will probably be quite similar to what Uber has estimated. Next, if we look at utilization, this is a really interesting factor. It's composed of a lot of different parameters. Things like weather, things like how many seats are in the air taxi, how many passengers are willing to pay the price, what sort of service are you offering, what's the population density in the area that's being serviced, etc. Uber came out with a figure of 67% as being an ideal and healthy utilization factor for VTOLs. And we agree with that. And we are confident that our flying cars will achieve the 67% utilization rate that's been predicated by Uber. Infrastructure is another interesting cost element. For those of you who are familiar with Birchal, you might recall there a company called Skyports that did some funding successfully on the Birchal platform not too long ago. Skyports' business is finding vertiport locations in Australia. Vertiports are like the helipads of the future, but they're better than helipads because they're not so specific. It could be a driveway, a gravel patch, a grassy area. It could be the top of a building. Okay, there are a lot of places where flying cars are going to be able to land and take off from. And Uber estimated that each metro area like Melbourne is going to require about 83 of these vertiports, and each one will be handling about 12 vehicles at any one time during the day. Now, at Pegasus, we think we can do better than that in that we are very compact. We fit really well into tight spaces, like a standard car park, and our air taxi will be no different. So we think that we're going to be very, very attractive as the vertiport industry gets going. Finally, you've got operating costs. And Uber said this is the hardest part to model in an emerging sector. And they said it's probably going to be in the range of $200,000 US per year, mainly pilot costs, insurance costs, landing rights, maintenance expenses, that sort of thing. And we're confident here at Pegasus that we will be within that cost range as well in terms of operating our vehicles.
Yeah, Pegasus is also extremely confident in our competitiveness in the entire industry. Again, it comes down to our engineering approach to make sure we have a practical and also registerable product at the end of the day, even for the air taxi. Actually, a lot of people have actually asked me the question is, why do we want to keep the roadable part, the roadable function for our flying car? Well, you see, all our eVTOL competitors are designed only to take off and land at vertiports. And therefore, they're not actually designed to take you to the destination. But by having the roadable function, Pegasus will be the only company, at least currently, that is designed to bring you exactly to where you want to go. With eVTOLs, you go to the vertiport, and you still have that awkward little taxi trip at the end of the day to get you where you want to go. So again, Pegasus is very advantageous in that aspect.
So with air taxi networks, the good thing about the Pegasus prototype that's under development now is that it'll be based on the existing technology stack, and hence it's going to share all the advantages that Jackie's already taken you through that we see already in our personal use flying cars. And we also believe that looking at likely markets that are going to take off in the AAM space, we think Australia is way up there. Why is that? Well, if you think about some of those utilization factors that I mentioned earlier, things like moderate weather, densely populated metro areas, advanced aviation regulatory regimes, people that are willing to spend a little bit more money to save time. Well, actually, Australia's East Coast ticks all those boxes. And we, for that reason, think it's actually an ideal location to get the AAM air taxi market kickstarted. Obviously, globally, there's other very good locations. Los Angeles and Dubai come to mind as likely early markets as well. And then we can add on top of that the fact that Australia is going to be hosting the 2032 Olympics up in Brisbane. Major events like the Olympics have a way of kickstarting new technologies. And we think this is going to help put Australia on the map in the AAM space. Keep your eyes on Paris 2024, the Olympics next year. That's generating a lot of interesting advanced transportation experimentation as well. We think Brisbane is going to be definitely in that same vector. So as Pegasus, we definitely aim to be a major player in this emerging and exciting space.
Yeah, and I must say that not so long ago, the Queensland government actually released a white paper. They want flying air taxis to be taking passengers as transportation for the 2032 Brisbane Olympics. So again, it is really happening. So why crowdfunding now? Well, you see, actually, the Avalon Air Show was a really great success for us because we got so many positive feedback from the people. Individuals that came over really gave us a lot of support. So compared to a traditional VC round, we thought, a crowdfunding campaign can actually allow the people to have the opportunity to own a part of a Melbourne-based fly car company. And we think that is quite exciting. So the capital will be used for us to go to the United States for our second certification of airworthiness by FAA. And so by that, Pegasus will become the first flying car company to receive certification in more than one jurisdiction. The FAA certification is actually very valuable because not only then we can sell to the United States, but also have greater access to the other international markets. If we are able to reach the higher end of our funding goal this time, which will be 3 million Australian dollars, we will be spending quite some capital in completing our air taxi prototype. So not only it will expand our production range, but also it will put us in a great advantage in terms of the entire AAM industry globally. Expanding production facilities and upgrading machineries is something we certainly have to do. That is because during COVID time, we had some pretty bad experiences about waiting for components. It took really long, and some of them didn't even arrive at the end of the day. So by having in-house production ability, we can eliminate all those issues. And it's all about being able to produce units that we will take an order for, but also push out the air taxi prototype much faster than what we could do right now. And of course, the last thing is that we need to upgrade our financial record keeping. Some of those accounting will have to be done. And the last thing is that we need to go through an audit process to be IFRS compliant. This is a very important accounting procedure we have to go through, because by doing so, Pegasus can have access to the greater United States and other international markets.
And so what's in the longer term? I think all the investors on the call tonight are very well aware that aviation is a capital-intensive industry and that AAM is an emerging aviation subset that is also capital-intensive. But fortunately, as we've seen, it's also attracting a lot of investment and a lot of interest. Clearly, AAM's future depends on the right technology being supported by proper regulatory frameworks. Now, we're very confident as Pegasus that we have the technology needed now. And we're confident that the regulation is going to move along with us at pace. So without a doubt, Pegasus will be conducting multiple capital raises over the next couple of years to allow us to get to scale production, as Jackie has just outlined. We will be working on scale production for both our personal use cars as well as our air taxis. And I think you've learned a little bit about us. I think you now see that the AAM future and the future of Pegasus is quite bright. And we sincerely hope that you as insightful investors do choose to join us on this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. That was great. Yeah, heaps of information there. Really exciting now to dive into questions from the audience. I know we've got a few coming through already, and I'll just reiterate, if you do have questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A panel there below. I did have a couple of questions come through beforehand via email, which I might just jump to first while those questions are just building now. This question was from Danny, who had a couple. And the first one was, can you please specify whether these crafts are defined as ultralight?
No, they're not defined as ultralights because ultralights are usually 125 kilograms. But you see, it is extremely difficult to build something that is that light that needs to be flyable, but also road drivable. So, but the good news is the aircraft itself is only 363 kilograms. So for a vehicle that flies and drives, this is an incredible achievement. We actually invented a method of producing our semi-monocoque. This is a term that we came up with. That was the possibility to make it happen. And with me in it, it's 436 kilograms. You're not going to see this kind of specification anywhere else. So it's not ultralight, but it is registerable.
Cool, cool. Thanks for that. And then the follow-on question from Danny there was, can you advise the regulatory constraints for use? I know there was a little bit in the presentation about that. Could you just go into a bit more detail for us there?
So the truth is, actually, Pegasus found somehow like a gap in regulation allow us to be registerable. So essentially, we follow the light rotorcraft regulation, which allow us to register it as an experimental aircraft. So that means anyone with a helicopter license currently, you're able to operate it. And that is the main goal, because if you build something that there's no regulation for you to be fitted in, it becomes extremely difficult. And also one of the things is that our competitors are making those electrical multi-rotor eVTOL aircrafts. But again, because there's no regulatory framework for it to fit in, this is something that we try to avoid.
So it's fair to say that if you have a license to fly a rotorcraft, you can fly wherever your license applies. You can fly
absolutely.
So allow you to fly normally. So it fits very easily into existing regulatory.
Yeah, with the license, there's no difficulty with you flying into airspace Delta or Charlie even. So
yeah. Okay, that's good to know. Just getting into some of the questions now on the Q&A panel, and just a reminder, if you do want a question answered, just to give it an upvote. I'm going to start at the top here with a question from Steve, who's asking, will there be a 4 or 5 blade version with foldable blades? I think he's also saying, could this increase payload as well if we do that?
Great question, Steve. So here's the thing. Pegasus actually holds a patent in contractible rotor blades. And this is something we will be implementing in our current and future models. I mean, having a system like that is it needs to go through extensive testing, but we do have a patent. But in answer to your question, yes, certainly in the future it will be. So what happens with the rotor blades right now is they're locked into the forward and aft position in driving mode. Again, that's an automatic system. So when you drive around, I'm sure you have seen the video, it's not going to be swinging around. That's how we overcome it. But yeah, so contractible rotor blades is something definitely we have on the board, and we will be using that.
Stay tuned for that. Good to know. Question here from Christopher asking, for the taxi version, is safety a potential issue if only 2 rotors instead of 4 rotors?
Oh, okay. So I'll be perfectly honest here. The 2 rotor is a concept, and what we have is much better than that. I can tell you right now, so it will be able to enter normal auto rotation, which is again a safety procedure for a rotorcraft. So essentially, if power loss is to occur, the aircraft is not really like what you see in the movies, which it drops out of the sky. That's not what it happens, by the way. There's a term called auto rotation. Essentially, the air that's pushing the aircraft up keeps it in the sky. So you have a particular angle or approach that you can conduct, and it will glide to the ground. As a trained pilot, you will be able to conduct those maneuvers very easily.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. And Jackie, you've been piloting the craft for a while now. Maybe could you just give us a little bit of insight into how it works with flying, and if you've done any sort of testing on the safety side of things, if you can go into a bit more detail on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so this particular aircraft we have been testing since 2021, so two years now, and it's a prototype. Obviously, before that has went through more testing. So we again wanted to make sure that the product is usable today. So we integrated rotorcraft controls to the road driving controls. You will still have a collective which helps you go up and down. you have a cyclic, which controls the pitch in the blades and also the rotation, or the direction of rotation. And you also have a set of pedals, which controls the yaw as you're hovering and maintaining balance in flight. But here's the really cool part about it, is that we actually have a 3-pedal system. Essentially, you have 1, 2, you have one more in the middle. So the right yaw pedal on the road becomes throttle. So that means we don't need to have an extra set of complicated control. So your right yaw becomes throttle, and also the middle pedal becomes the brake on the road. So again, that's a very well sorted integrated system. Very natural for a rotorcraft pilot to conduct to be piloting, and also is very normal for a driver to be driving on the road.
Perfect. Thanks for that. And Jackie and Debbie, can I just ask you to stop sharing your screen so we can get a little bit of a better view of you when you're answering the questions? That'd be fantastic. Appreciate that.
There we go.
There we go. Yep. Question here from Subham asking a couple of questions here. So first question is, when will the investment convert to shares? So you're actually getting shares up front. That's the deal with equity crowdfunding. Everyone gets ordinary shares. So that's just to be clear on that. And then the next question is Pegasus going to be publicly limited anytime soon? So obviously we can't go into too much detail about public listings because that we can't be sure about that. But in terms of maybe exit plans, Pegasus team, do you want to talk through any ideas in that space without being too specific?
We are very confident in terms of our potential, and in the sense that Pegasus, for those companies that we have compared to before that are listed, and we feel like our technology can enter the market much sooner than them. So I think it is a natural path for Pegasus to take to grow bigger and seek wherever the biggest potential is. Do a little comparison and you see we're doing good. And yeah. I think you can make the judgment.
Yeah, appreciate that. And obviously there'll be more details in the offer document about use of funds and financials as well that you can go into there. And the final question here was about any strategies for air traffic. I'm imagining that's from controlling air traffic if there's a number of flying cars in the sky. Have you thought about that at all?
Absolutely. So there are actually already aircraft control systems exist. And again, because in today's regulation, the Pegasus flying car is being treated as a normal rotorcraft or like a helicopter. And therefore, the current system works for Pegasus. I think most people are worried about is that if there are 10,000 of them in the sky, well, first thing is early adoption is not going to be 10,000 of them in the sky. They will be strategically placed in many different locations so people can get to those destinations much more efficient. And as much as Pegasus is capable of doing, for example, flying into the city right now, but I'm sure the regulation will take some time for it to catch up. But again, the good news is that FAA has also released a white paper about how that framework is going to work. Again, it shows the advantage of Pegasus because we work in the current airspace regulation. We do not have to wait, essentially, for the regulation to catch up completely. But of course, when the regulations have improved, we can utilize our advantages even more.
Yeah, I mean, CASA is planning to, as early as 2026, as per its white paper, to have all of the standards defined for how autonomous and piloted advanced air mobility vehicles should be operating. And that's not far away. I think, it's very interesting for those who are quite interested. If you go to the CASA website and look for their advanced air mobility white paper, it's worth a read. It's a long document, but it's impressive what they're planning.
Yeah, good to do a bit more research on that. And we do have another question around safety ratings here from Lan asking, does it have an ANCAP safety rating or is that only once certified for road use? Follow-on question is, failing that, what still needs to be overcome to drive on Australian roads?
Understood. So there's not an NCAP rating at the moment because for Pegasus at the moment, it will go through something called either an individually constructed vehicle or an ultra low volume vehicle. Essentially for that particular regulation, we do not exactly have to do the crash test as conducted by other major car manufacturers. However, we have to show them on data that we're able to do so. Again, I can tell you this. So Peter Schleifer, who's our automotive engineer, he's absolutely legendary in terms of how many championships and wins and battles. He designed those cars, so he knows what he's doing. So we put safety as a number one for our product, because not only it has to fly, but also it needs to drive on the road. So as a flying vehicle, it is so much stronger than other conventional aircrafts already, because you need to handle the road loads. But for a driving vehicle, our structure, our technology, our manufacturing process is so much more advanced than even just a particular or regular aircraft. So I feel very confident about as we integrated these two technologies. It is a very safe product at the moment. We've actually purposely conducted some ultra-rotating landings before, and even dropping it about 4 meters in the sky, which no other aircraft manufacturer will ever do. And the chassis not only withstood the forces, but we were able to reuse it almost immediately.
Yeah, good to know. Good to know. I know there's a lot in there with when it comes to roadworthy safety tests. So glad to know that there's been plenty go into that. Rowan here has got a few questions asking, first of all, saying such a cool idea and I want one. Next question is, what is your current target market, and is there active interest and or negotiations for any of these markets? And then finally, do you have any current orders in the works? And if so, can you share the details?
So I was explaining that the current market is for overseas private institutional buyers. So they want to buy this also to test the waters and see how they can implement Pegasus in their particular own market. So again, we've taken orders of 10 already. The 2 behind us we're building right now and will be delivered to our customers by this year. And a part of the reason for this round is so we can have funding for a bit of an expansion. So I mean, we can build the 8 right now, but the space is quite limited. So we want to have that capability of doing so. I think the second part of your question was about, is there any negotiations right now? Yeah, we've been talking with, for example, Malaysia, Southeast Asian countries. So the market for us is really not limited to Australia at all. And again, by having a CASA certification is actually quite helpful. Southeast countries, which they want to use it for border force control. Again, because our flight range is quite substantial, we serve great utilities for them. So that's what we are doing right now. But again, we'll really be pitching for the specialty departments, because again, it's a brilliant vehicle for them. Actually, let me put up a case study for you for any of those police users. Westgate Bridge in Melbourne, traffic accident happens, blocked traffic. Pegasus will be the fastest thing that's able to get there. And yes, really, when the regulation allows, you can land on the bridge to help the traffic, provide guidance if needed. And so this is why we see how police force can start using these vehicles straight away. Again, it's about providing feedback for this traffic. And really, some people might say a drone can also do the job, but first, they don't fly for as long. And at least to this stage, people still want human feedback about the information.
And I think Pegasus would offer a much more attractive operating cost base than a helicopter. They're very expensive.
That's true.
Police spends a lot on helicopters, and a flying car is a much cheaper version of something that can do the same job, but at a real fraction of the cost.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, great use case there as well. Thinking about getting an emergency response out to a crash, especially in a high traffic area. Really good to think about from that lens. I've got a question here from John asking, what kind of return are we looking for on our investment opportunity? And do you think there's any opportunities for opening dealerships or any other involvement, I guess, from existing car manufacturers?
Absolutely, there is. We're actually a part of the. Sorry, please remind me. We're a part of the UAE.
We're a member of the Australian Business Council in Dubai, and we made a submission to the CEPA, the Australia UAE cooperative economic partnership agreement that's being negotiated this year between DFAT and the UAE. So the United Arab Emirates, with Dubai in particular, is quite an attractive market for us.
Yes. So by opening that bridge, allow us to seek agencies to sell our flying cars.
Especially.
In a very attractive industry. John, I think my question to you would be, where are you based and where are you looking at? Certainly, that is a topic of conversation we'll want to be having and explore more opportunities as we go. So I think it's a positive question, because for other investors, someone just asked us if we want to sell us their cars, sell them our cars. So
yeah, definitely encourage yourself, John, to reach out if you have any more details on that.
Yes, please.
Question here from Rod asking, what percentage of the proprietary content is in the aircraft? I guess like stuff that you've maybe patented. And will you have control over the aftermarket? I'm not specifically sure what the aftermarket is referring to. Maybe Debbie or Jackie, you know a bit more about that.
So we have 6 patents right now, 6 patents. We actually have a really good strategy about it, because a patent is extremely expensive to apply for. But I'm sure in the next round that we will be spending quite some capital in protecting our patents further. But we have 6 patents right now. And because patents is all about priority date, which, whoever registers first gets that protection. So we are quite aware of doing so. And to be honest, aftermarket components, that's a very good question. But to my mind at the moment, I think the level of technology we have is pretty hard to replicate. For example, we have a full carbon fiber unibody tail boom that's not done anywhere else. And unless someone buy one and absolutely destroy it, I don't see another way that they can manufacture things like that. But I must say, for example, a lot of the carbon tubes, they actually came from CST from Sydney. So, those components are not exactly specialty for us. People can buy already. But I think specialty fastener is another thing that we'll be looking at to overcome those issues. But a very interesting question, but I don't see it being replicated in the near future.
Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, question here from Sashin asking, somewhere I saw a news article that Vic Police is doing a trial on one of the cars. Are they looking to take orders, and what is their feedback so far? I'm not too sure if you can confirm that in terms of the police trials for your cars, or
no, there's certainly no confirmation about that, but we are actively seeking that conversation with them. I must say that the big police, their big boss is not exactly an elected member, but so it will be hard to get that conversation going. But again, our market is not limited to Australia. We're having very active engagement with Malaysia, for example. So, there's still great potential for Pegasus. But to answer your question, certainly there's no trial yet. But I can say every policeman or woman that came to our show during the Avalon air show, they all loved it. Actually, I must say, one case study that they provided was that you are not allowed to pursue, a car chase anymore these days. It's because people panic and they crash into other people, or they hurt themselves. One policeman told me, if Pegasus is able just to hover in the ground and follow the driver in the air, because we can fly for 3 hours, we can just make sure those escapes are peaceful and we don't have to hurt anybody else. And because when they stop, we make a report feedback about their exact location. And that's another way that Pegasus can be very useful for the police force.
Yeah, good to know. Philip here has asked a question about if I invest in the company, what is the return? So quite simply, Philip, you're getting shares, ordinary shares in the company. So you're buying in and you're getting a piece of ownership. So, in the future, you'll still own shares in the company. And if usual path for exit is acquisition, so that's another company buying Pegasus or listing on the stock exchange. So if any of those two events happen and you own shares, then obviously you'll have your shares bought out, or have the option to at least. So that's the usual return on investment that most investors are aiming for. Elan is asking here, are there any major competitors in the Southern Hemisphere?
No. One of the so there are actually a few other two companies I believe in Australia that's doing one of these like a flying racing thing. It's not manned for the moment, and they're still electric. So as much as they're in the field, but they're not exactly relevant or they're not exactly capable of what the Pegasus can do, at least for now. Also, another one is a really big aircraft with eight electrical propellers, which they conducted their first test flight. I think it's only a few months ago.
Yeah, it's up in New South Wales. They were at Avalon as well.
Yeah, we had a great conversation. Obviously, it's a very bright future, but I don't see exact direct competition.
Yeah, it's hard to compete with Pegasus because of the unique hybrid power system. I think the other companies that are active in Australia are going down the eVTOL route, whether it's racing cars or like an air ambulance. And so it's hard to compare apples and oranges when you've got a hybrid powered system like Pegasus. It's also roadable. These others aren't. They're just not really comparable. So you have to be a little bit careful about what really is competition
that's right.
versus what is a different type of product altogether. Almost.
Again, on the topic of electricity, it is the future of aviation. I mean, and maybe also hydrogen, but it's just not ready enough now. But the good thing with Pegasus is we're using that hybrid system, so we drive this electricity. And so that means we are getting to learn about the electrical side of things. And meaning, when battery density is good enough, we simply make a switch and fly away.
Yeah, and there was a question there on electric power as well, which I think you've answered very well from Dave. So ask you over that one. Thanks for that question, Dave. Boone is asking, where will the future manufacturing plant be based? Do you have any plans for changing that or maybe upgrading the existing one?
Upgrade, that's for sure. But we absolutely want everything to stay in Australia. But I must say, right, how we work right now is a lot of the critical components come from the United States, from Italy, from South Africa even, from Great Britain. For example, the prepreg is British. And I have to say, this is working quite well for us. But you see, having full in-house production is actually extremely hard and cost ineffective in this modern economy. So obviously, we still need to operate as a company. We still need to make sure we can have a product that people are willing to purchase. And therefore, expansion, that's for sure, changing locations for sure. We actually applied for the AMSR location that's in Sydney. Essentially, that could become our next manufacturing facility to conduct even more research and development. So expansion for sure, moving location for sure. But yeah.
Cool. And we've touched on this a little bit already, but in terms of your production capacity at the moment, maybe just some details on that. And then if there's any upgrades, what that might move to?
Well, our current place is rather small, but we're looking at somewhere that's more than 1,400 square meters. So that will allow us to build 8 very comfortably. So now we can do, it's just not very comfortable. But obviously, because with small units, quality control is very important. But again, we can't overcome that problem by our initial design. So when we design a component, we want to make sure it's easy to manufacture. But so expansion, again, that is certainly needed. And especially for the 4-seater that's coming up very, very soon, we want to expand so we can build more comfortably.
Perfect. Thanks for that. Mohammed here is asking some specifics about the offer, which is what's the minimum amount one can invest? How can you buy shares? So all this will be available when the offer goes live next Wednesday is a plan for Pegasus. So I'd encourage you to check that out. This is a very accessible type of investment. Pegasus team are probably still thinking about exactly what the minimum amount of shares you can buy is. But yeah, just keep in mind, this is very accessible for most people. We're not talking about thousands of dollars. Yeah, for most companies, the minimum amount is in the hundreds of dollars, but there'll be more details on that to come in the offer, which will be live on Wednesday at 12 p.m. Cool. And I've got a question here asking, is there potential for partnership with other aeronautical manufacturing companies, as in, are there current or pending discussions?
There are certainly opportunities to collaborate with another aviation company. Well, we are actually having conversation with Monash. Well, based in Mount Wavy, actually, because we're so close to Monash University. So we are actively seeking engagement with other institutions, which will help us with our R&D and also production in the future. Actual conversations about how we can collaborate with another aviation company? No, not really. Because we have to keep this thing fairly secret, especially with our semi-monocoque. We don't want to tell everybody how we make it yet, because this technology, the semi-monocoque, is actually not only a very applicable for light sport aircraft, but also in the automotive industry. It can actually really speed up the manufacturing time. So for the sake of our own protection, that is not exactly being done, but collaboration is obviously welcomed, but it has to be on good terms.
Yeah, definitely. I guess, it makes a lot of sense in the early stages where you're still developing the technology and it's very new. Obviously, there's be some concerns about giving that away or collaborating too early for sure. Question here about from Hendry saying that the rotor blades seem to be fully exposed, which means there's potential safety issues when spinning blades may come into contact with people or things. Just any details on how you mitigate that risk.
So at the moment, like I was explaining before, the rotor blades are actually locked in the forward and aft position as you drive. That's an automatic system, so it's not going to be swinging around as you drive around. But obviously, if you want to go to a private car park, it is possible if someone who's really tall that might hit their head. So for our very first method to prevent this from happening is we actually have a cover for it. And to be able to satisfy the road registration, we actually kind of have to paint it very yellow so people can see it. This is also applicable for our rotor blade. Our tail rotor blades. Essentially, will become a reflective yellow thing that people can see. And I'm sure, because I think this thing is quite good looking, so people will see it from far away, so they're not going to run into it.
No, it sounds like you've thought about it, and definitely need to be ducking your head if you're too tall.
Sorry, I must say one more thing. Again, the future models will implement that contractible rotor blade system, so the problem will be resolved. Yeah,
cool. Sounds like it's in the works. That's great to know. Thanks for all the questions. We've got through 16 questions so far. There's still 10 open. We only have a few minutes left to go, so we'll do our best to get through as many as we can. But really appreciate everyone hanging around and being so engaged with this webinar. Got a question here saying, what would be the price point of the product when it's sold? Do you think it will be similar to a car price, or selling the car retail, I should say? And then another question about going public, which we answered. So price point and sales to people retail, maybe in Australia. If you have any details on that.
Yep. So currently, the 10 orders units being taken are worth $330,000 USD each. So that's pretty much equivalent to about 500,000 Australian dollars. But obviously, that's very early stage in the production. That we really do see those Pegasus E flying car units dropping down about $200,000 very fairly soon, actually. Again, because creating.
$200,000.
That's right. Yeah. Yes, please. And again, because initially creating a mold for all those beautiful body exteriors are very expensive. We have to spread those costs somehow. Retail in the near future hopefully will be about 200,000 Australian. And and really, if you want to make an order right now, we are more than happy to take it.
Great. That makes total sense about early stage. A lot of the parts will be custom and costs will be a little bit higher than they would be if you're manufacturing more. So that makes a lot of sense. Cool. Just a few more questions we're going through here. So, we've got a question here from Andreas, which we've answered. I'll just reiterate for you, Andreas. So, Andreas asking, where will we be able to take off from? Will it have a flight runway to go into the air? So it's don't need a runway. At the moment, vertical takeoff and landing is key. I mean, Jackie or Debbie, is there anything further to add in terms of takeoff and landing that people need to be aware of?
Whatever the current airspace regulation allows for helicopters to take off and land, we can do so. And in the future, I'm sure, to a stage that the soccer field that's 300 meters away from your house, that is also going to be a takeoff and landing spot. Yeah. So again, being as practical as we can, we are usable today as an aircraft, and no, it does not require a runway to take off or land.
Yeah. Question here from Steve asking, is there anti-theft measures installed, or will this be implemented?
Specialty fastener is something we're going to have to look into very soon to prevent that from happening. We got this question in Avalon too, because we're using standard AN aviation balls, AN6 and AN4 and 5 or AN6s. So people potentially with a set of sockets or spanners, they can take apart the car. But specialty fasteners will prevent these kind of things from happening. And so this is something we're certainly looking into.
Cool. Question here from Mark asking, we've already answered the question about electric drive chains, but he's asking, is there a plan for ballistic parachute system now or in the future?
For the future models, yes. But for this current Pegasus E flying car, it is not necessary. Again, we have a safety function called the auto rotation. This is actually applicable to all rotorcrafts. So essentially, when the power drops, you have a certain time frame you can react to. You can drop the collective, and because you're descending, the air is actually pushing you up, which is pushing the rotor blades for it to be rotating, and therefore you'll still have lift. So it will just be a faster landing compared to a normal one. But again, as a person operating this Pegasus right now, you need to be a pilot. And through that 25 hours of training, that's something you will have to learn. So, yeah. But ballistic parachutes later on for sure.
Cool. Last question. I'll just read out a few more statements here as well from the participants. And thanks again for everyone who's stuck around. Christopher's asking just a question about decibels, which I imagine is referring to how loud the craft is.
So at the moment, if you measure from 30 feet, it's about 91 decibels. So just over a normal fast motorbike, and just under a super loud superbike.
Perfect. Got some shout outs here saying thank you for your time and efforts with the presentation. And final one here from Dave saying, Jack, I can confirm the battery cell technology is advancing rapidly, and within 2 to 5 years, there should be some systems capability of 20 to 40 times what we currently have, and this is referring to the EV market. So yeah, David Gutzel there is posted that question. So if you want any more details about the electrification of these vehicles, it'd be a great person to reach out with by the sounds of it. Mm-hmm. So in summary, we've only got a couple of minutes left. I just want to wrap up by reiterating that next Wednesday is when we'll have the investment offer live at 12 p.m. So everyone pencil that in your diary who's still on the call tonight, who's maybe watching the recording later. But just finally, Debbie and Jackie, any last words for potential investors as to why they should get involved with this opportunity?
Pegasus is in a very unique position because of our engineering approach. So functionality and practicality is really what we focus on. And this philosophy will live on through our next generations of flying cars, which not only we're going to keep it really nice to fly, but also roadable. Again, the purpose is that Pegasus will be the only flying car that's designed to take you to the destination that you need, no matter where you are. And I think this is extremely important. As much as electrical aircraft sounds very futuristic and it sounds like, oh, that might be the best thing, but I certainly wouldn't think that is coming in the next 8 years. And some people are even thinking about fully autonomous versions, which again, as much as I think it's a good idea, but again, I don't think passengers would get as a very initial product to be putting out on the market. One last thing for me is the people that I've called, a lot of them also ask me the question is, what's the minimum investment? So I just want to tell you one more time that this is crowdfunding. This is really an exciting opportunity for all Australian people to own a part of a Pegasus flying car company. So really, I'm sure the minimum is actually very low. It is not in the thousands. It's probably in the low hundreds. So really, any investment that you're putting us, we'll put it into good use to advance the technology that we have and push it to the market as fast as we can.
And I think it's an exciting opportunity for people to invest a very small amount of money, but be part of something very big. This is much bigger than we all think. We don't see it yet, but it's out there, and we're going to be there earlier than everyone else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time, Debbie and Jackie, and thanks for everyone who joined and participated. We'll send around the webinar recording in case you missed part of it or you wanted to share with anyone else tomorrow. That will be available. And like I said, just keep in mind next Wednesday is when the opportunity goes live, and pencil that in your diary, because for everyone who's registered as an expression of interest, you have access to this opportunity for the first little while before it goes live to the public. And if you haven't done so already for whatever reason, please make sure you register before next week so you have that opportunity as well. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Debbie and Jackie again. And
Thank you.
Speak to you soon. All the best.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.